The glass in my hand cracked before I even realized I was gripping it too hard. Lady Isavrin stood 3 feet away from me, her pale eyes locked on mine, and the entire room had gone silent in a way that made my skin crawl. 50 of the most powerful beings in this sector were watching us, and I had just called the ruler of an ancient empire a coward in front of all of them. I did not plan to say it. The words had simply come out, the way truth sometimes does when you are tired of pretending. Her fangs were not showing, but I could see the tension in her jaw, the way her nostrils flared slightly, as if she were tasting the air around me. That was not a comfortable thought. I had been briefed, before this posting, that the Ve'erun could sense things in blood that no human instrument could measure. Fear, anger, truth, lies. All of it moved through the air like scent to them, and right now, my body was flooding with every one of those signals at once. I opened my mouth to fix it. "I am sorry," I said quickly. "That was out of line. I did not mean to say that." Her eyes narrowed, and for a moment, I thought she might actually strike me. Instead, she took one slow step closer, and her voice came out low, almost amused, but with an edge underneath it that made my spine go rigid. "You meant every word," she said. "Do not insult me twice." I froze completely. Around us, the murmurs among the other guests had stopped entirely. Somewhere behind me, I heard the quiet, nervous breathing of Daniel Whitfield, the junior attaché who had been assigned to shadow me for this event. He was not going to be any help. He looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. "I do not understand," I said carefully, because I genuinely did not. Isavrin tilted her head, studying me the way a scientist studies something unexpected under a lens. "You called me a coward for negotiating peace instead of war. You believed it when you said it. I could taste it on you the moment the words left your mouth. And now you stand here, trying to erase what you meant, as if I am too weak to hear the truth. That is the true insult, human. Not your words, your retreat from them." I felt something shift in my chest, a strange mixture of fear and confusion. Back home, an apology was supposed to smooth things over. It was supposed to be the safe move, the polite move, the thing you did when you realized you had gone too far. But she was looking at me like I had just tried to hand her poison disguised as medicine. "Where I come from," I said slowly. "Saying sorry is meant to show respect. It means I care about how you feel." "And where I come from," she said, stepping even closer, close enough that I could feel the faint chill radiating from her skin. "Changing your words to protect someone's feelings means you believe they cannot survive honesty. It means you see them as fragile. Do you see me as fragile, Ambassador Callahan?" My name in her mouth sounded like a blade being drawn slowly from its sheath. I swallowed hard, and something in me refused to look away from her, even though every instinct screamed that I should apologize again, soften the moment, smile, do anything to make this easier. But that was the exact mistake I had already made once. "No," I said. "I do not see you as fragile. I think you are one of the strongest people I have ever stood in front of. And that is exactly why I said what I said. Because I do not think peace with the Karanoth colony is cowardice. I think it takes more strength to choose peace than to choose war. But watching your council today, watching them push you toward retreating from that peace out of fear of looking weak, that felt like cowardice to me. Not from you, from them. And when I said it, I was looking right at you, so it landed on you instead." The room seemed to hold its breath along with me. Isavrin's eyes did not blink. For a long moment, she simply studied my face, searching for something, and I had the distinct feeling that whatever she found there would determine whether I walked out of this hall in one piece or not. Then, slowly, the corner of her mouth curved upward, just slightly, just enough to reveal the edge of one fang. "There," she said quietly. "That is the truth. Say it like that again, and you will find you are the only human in this sector who has ever spoken to me without flinching afterward." I let out a breath I did not realize I had been holding. "You are not going to have me removed from the embassy?" I asked, because I needed to know, and because it seemed like the sort of thing worth checking. "Removed?" She almost laughed, a low sound that vibrated with something ancient and amused. "Ambassador, I have spent 300 years listening to diplomats tell me exactly what they think I want to hear. Every treaty negotiation, every trade agreement, every polite dinner like this one, filled with careful words designed to please me instead of inform me. Do you understand how exhausting that is? To never know if the person across from you actually believes what they are saying." "I had not thought about it that way," I admitted. "Of course you had not. Your species built an entire civilization on the comfort of soft lies, compliments that are not true, apologies that erase themselves the moment they leave your mouth. It is remarkable, honestly, how functional you all seem to be despite it." She said this without any real cruelty, more like someone describing an unusual but interesting species of animal. We are not all like that, I said. No, she agreed. You are not. That is precisely why I am still speaking to you instead of having my guards escort you to the nearest airlock. That last part was said so casually that it took me a second to register it as a joke, if it even was one. With her, I genuinely could not be certain. Daniel finally found his voice from somewhere behind me. Ambassador Callahan, perhaps we should stay where you are, Sovereign said, without even turning to look at him, and Daniel went quiet immediately. She returned her attention to me, and something in her posture had changed, the tension replaced by a kind of sharp curiosity that felt almost more dangerous than her anger had been. Tell me, she said, if I asked you right now, honestly, what you think of my court, of the way my advisors handled today's session, would you tell me the truth? Even if it might cost you your position here. I thought about lying. For half a second, the old instinct rose up in me, the diplomatic training that said choose your words carefully, protect the relationship, do not risk the mission over one honest answer. But I had already learned, in the span of about 90 seconds, that with this woman, that instinct was going to get me killed far faster than honesty ever would. I think your advisors are afraid of you, I said. Not because you are cruel, but because you are the only one in that room willing to admit that this war has already cost you too much. I think they push you toward aggression because standing behind old wounds is easier than building something new. And I think you already know all of this, which is why you asked me the question instead of simply telling me your own opinion. For a long moment she said nothing. The silence stretched long enough that I became acutely aware of the sound of my own heartbeat, and I wondered, with a strange detached curiosity, whether she could hear it too. Then she reached out, and before I could react, her fingers closed gently around my wrist. Her skin was cool, almost cold, but her grip was firm, controlled, deliberate. Your pulse, she said, is fast, but steady. Interesting. Is that good or bad? I asked. It means you are afraid, but you are not lying. She released my wrist and studied me for another moment. Most humans who come through my court either lie to me smoothly, which I can taste instantly, or they panic and say nothing at all. You are the first in a very long time who has simply told me the truth, understood the risk, and stood there anyway. I did not exactly plan for any of this to happen tonight, I admitted. No one ever does, she said. That is usually when the truth comes out. Planned words are rehearsed. Unplanned words are honest, even when they are inconvenient. Around us, the party had slowly resumed its quiet murmur, though I could feel dozens of eyes still tracking our conversation from across the hall. Somewhere near the far wall, I noticed a tall Ve'erun man in dark formal robes, watching us with an expression I could not quite read, something between concern and calculation. Who is that? I asked, nodding subtly in his direction. Izavrin followed my gaze without turning her head fully, a small, controlled movement. Lord Viserion, my cousin, and one of the advisors I mentioned. He believes negotiating with the Karanoth is a mistake, and he believes humans are a temporary curiosity, useful for now, but ultimately unworthy of trust. And what do you believe? I asked. I believe, she said slowly, that trust is not given based on species. It is given based on evidence. And you, Ambassador Callahan, just gave me a piece of evidence that very few humans have managed to provide. What is that? You did not try to make yourself comfortable in my presence. Most people who fear me try to hide that fear behind politeness. You let me see it, and then you spoke anyway. That is not weakness. That is control. I was not entirely sure how to respond to that, so I said nothing, which seemed to be the correct choice, because she continued speaking. There is a reason my people call ourselves truth drinkers, though your language translates it poorly as vampire, she said. It is not simply blood we take when we feed. It is the truth carried within it. Every lie a person tells changes the taste of what runs through their veins, subtly, but unmistakably to us. A person who lies constantly becomes almost tasteless after enough years, hollowed out by their own dishonesty. It is one of the saddest things I have ever witnessed. That sounds like a lonely way to exist, I said, always tasting whether someone means what they say. It is, she agreed, and for the first time, something in her voice softened into something that sounded almost tired. Which is why an honest conversation, even an uncomfortable one, is worth more to me than 1,000 polite dinners. Lord Viserion was approaching now, his steps unhurried but deliberate, and I felt the atmosphere around us shift again, colder this time, sharper. Cousin, he said, stopping a respectful distance away, though his eyes were fixed entirely on me. I could not help but notice your extended conversation with the human ambassador. Should I be concerned? Should you be concerned about what, exactly? Isavren asked, her tone carrying a warning I could hear even though I was not the one it was aimed at. About whether he has learned to flatter you as skillfully as the others, Viserion said, his gaze flicking to me with open suspicion. Humans are known for their charm. It would be foolish to mistake charm for honesty. I felt the urge to defend myself rise up immediately, but I forced it down. If there was one thing I had learned in the last 10 minutes, it was that defending yourself too quickly, too smoothly, looked exactly like the kind of practiced dishonesty these people distrusted most. So instead, I said, I called your cousin a coward 20 minutes ago, in front of half this room. If that is charm, I am doing it wrong. Something flickered across Viserion's face, surprise, maybe even the faint ghost of respect, though he quickly smoothed his expression back into careful neutrality. You said that to her directly? He asked. I did. And you are still standing here. He is still standing here, Sovereign confirmed. Because he meant it, and because when I challenged him on it, he did not retreat. He explained himself further instead. He gave me more truth, not less. Viserion studied me for a long moment, and I could see calculations shifting behind his eyes, old assumptions being tested against new information. That is unusual, he said finally. That is precisely my point, Isavren said. For 3 centuries I have listened to advisors, ambassadors, and courtiers tell me exactly what they believe I want to hear. This man walked into my hall and told me what he actually believes, knowing it could cost him his position, possibly his life. That is not charm, cousin. That is exactly the kind of honesty our alliance with the humans has been missing. Viserion did not look entirely convinced, but he inclined his head slightly, a gesture that seemed to carry real weight among his people. I will consider your words, he said, and then, after a pause, added, Ambassador Callahan, was it? Perhaps we will speak further, another time. I would welcome that, I said, and meant it, because whatever else was happening here, I could feel that something important had just shifted. Some door had opened, that had been closed before. Viserion gave a final measured nod and withdrew, moving back through the crowd with the same unhurried grace he had approached with. Once he was gone, Isavren turned back to me, and there was something new in her expression, something almost like satisfaction. You have made an impression tonight, she said, not all of it comfortable, but all of it real. That matters more here than you understand. I am still not sure if I should be relieved or terrified, I admitted. Both, she said simply. That is usually the correct response around my court. I found myself almost smiling, despite everything, despite the fact that my heart was still beating faster than normal, despite the fact that I had very nearly caused a diplomatic disaster within the first hour of this posting. Can I ask you something honestly? I said, since honesty seems to be the currency here. Always. Did you actually consider having me removed, back when I first said it? She considered the question seriously, which I appreciated, rather than brushing it aside. For a moment, yes, she admitted. It has been a long time since anyone spoke to me so directly, and my first instinct was that you were either remarkably brave or remarkably foolish. It took me a few seconds to taste the difference. And which was it? Both, she said again, and this time there was something warmer in her voice, something that almost sounded like amusement mixed with respect. You are foolish enough to speak truths that could get you killed, and brave enough to stand behind them once they are said. In my experience, those two qualities rarely exist in the same person. Usually one cancels out the other. I will try to take that as a compliment, I said. You should, she said. It very much was one. Across the hall, the music had shifted into something slower, and the other guests had mostly returned to their own conversations, though I could still feel occasional glances drifting our way. Daniel had finally relaxed enough to step a little closer, though he still looked like a man who had narrowly avoided being struck by lightning. Ambassador, Isavren said, her voice lower now, meant only for me. I suspect our next conversation will need to happen soon, formally, regarding the Karanoth negotiations. I would like you present when that discussion happens. Why me, specifically? I asked. There are more senior diplomats in this delegation. Because they will tell me what they think will please me, she said. You, apparently, will tell me what you actually believe, even when it is inconvenient. In a negotiation this delicate, inconvenient truths are worth far more than comfortable lies. I nodded slowly, feeling the weight of what she was offering, and the danger of it too. Being trusted enough to speak honestly to someone who could taste dishonesty in your blood was not a small thing. It was an enormous responsibility, one that could reshape an entire alliance, or destroy it, depending on how carefully I handled every word from here forward. I will be there, I said, and I will tell you the truth, even when it costs me something. Especially then, she said. That is when it matters most. She studied me for one more moment, something unreadable passing behind her pale eyes, and then, unexpectedly, she extended her hand toward me, not in the formal diplomatic gesture I had been trained to expect, but something more personal, more direct. I took it, and her grip was firm, deliberate, and cool against my skin. "Welcome to my court, Ambassador Callahan," she said. "You are the first human I have met in a very long time who I believe I can actually trust. Do not make me regret that." "I will do my best not to," I said. "See that you do not," she said, and for the first time that night, her smile reached her eyes fully, sharp and genuine all at once. Because unlike your polite apologies, a broken trust cannot simply be taken back. As she finally released my hand and turned to address the rest of the gathering, I stood there for a moment, my heart still pounding, fully aware that everything about my mission here had just changed. I had come to this court expecting to navigate careful diplomacy, polished words, and safe distances. Instead, I had discovered something far more valuable and far more dangerous. A woman who could taste every lie ever spoken to her, and who had just decided, against every instinct that 3 centuries of betrayal had taught her, to trust the one person willing to tell her the truth without flinching. Whatever came next in these negotiations, I understood one thing clearly as I watched her walk back into the crowd, her presence commanding the entire room, without a single wasted movement. I was never going to apologize to her again. Not because I feared her, but because, for the first time in my career, I finally understood that some words are not meant to be softened, and some truths are worth every risk it takes to say them out loud.